Welcome to The Juice, Consumer Direct podcast, where we here at Squeeze try to answer some of our clients' questions. And today we're going to address white glove branded experiences and how it benefits our clients. So that's something we say a lot. When I'm on a sales call, I always talk about the white glove experience that they're going to have here at Squeeze. And I'm always grateful that when I turn things over to Jacob and team, that's actually what happens. So in this context, we want to make sure that consumers are having an experience that actually builds brands up. And when they're interfacing with us, we can represent that client, say them by name, and end up having a really good experience. So Jacob, let's talk about some of the things that we've done historically to kind of create that sort of white glove experience for the consumers.
Yeah, something that you mentioned, I think that's interesting is creating a branded customer experience. And I think there's times with what we do where, a customer interacting with the brand before they ever have a sales conversation is useful. And there might be times where it actually is not super useful, right? One of the first things that we try to understand and that we try to study when you bring us a client is what is the relationship that this client has with these leads or these customers that they've sent to us, right? What is the world that this lead base currently exists in? Are they being bombarded with calls and with texts and with emails from a bunch of different companies or from this one company, right? Are those touch points branded or are they not branded, right? These are things that we need to understand so that we can try to anticipate and predict the customer's behavior and the customer's propensity to have a sales conversation before we ever create a plan, right? And I think there's a lot of different ways that you can create really nice branded customer experiences, right? And those can begin right at the top of the funnel, or they can start happening a little bit later on in the funnel, depending, like I said, on those relationships.
Well, I think that experience that you mentioned at the beginning, by the time we step in, sometimes we're stepping in at the very beginning of the sales cycle, and sometimes we're kind of halfway through, and understanding that first part affects how we approach our outreach type, how we're going to do it, how we're going to build that brand, and make sure that we're very sensitive to it. And I like that. And one of our value adds as a company is we're partnership minded. And you say that all the time when we're bringing on a new client, we're your partner, we're not your vendor. We're going to go out of our way to create this experience and understand your business and do it really, really well so that when we create these cadences, they make sense for that experience.
So one of our top salespeople about 10 years ago that was working with us, on a project, we've done sales projects with leads that come from the web, from internet offers, from infomercials, different things like that. He kind of clued me in on something and said that, the voice that he uses and the tone and the examples that he shares have to be congruent with the voice of the original message that piqued their interest to begin with. If they're shopping online or they watching TV late at night and they see a commercial or an infomercial or something like that about a specific product or service, and that piqued their interest enough to get excited enough to call in or to respond to that offer, then when he's speaking with them, he wants to use those same voice inflections and get their excitement up to the same level that they had when they initially responded. And then he knew if he could do that, then he would close the sale.
That's very cool.
When we onboard, we request all of the marketing and training collateral from our partners so that we can integrate that into all of our messaging, both, SMS and just over the phone. Are their salespeople referred to as salespeople, loan officers, loan consultants, loan specialists, or do they refer to their customers as members or as patients or as friends, or they've got all sorts of verbiage that they use, but whatever we use needs to be congruent with what they experience on the end, because we're a pay for performance company, right?
Yeah.
The nature of what we do, our partners pay for a qualified sales opportunity. And we can generate a qualified sales opportunity that is really prone to transact and one that has not had a good experience, even though they fit all of the qualifications. And guess what's going to happen? The partner is going to pay the same for a colder qualified sales opportunity and a warmed up qualified sales opportunity. And if our partners don't close deals, then we don't have a partner anymore.
Yeah.
They're gone, right? We're month to month. We don't have annual contracts. So we've got to earn their business every month by providing qualified sales opportunities that are having a good experience, because those are going to close.
Closing at a certain rate.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have customized pricing, which means we actually need to look at this opportunity, like you just said, and totally understand it from A to Z, just to even price it correctly. I mean, we've done similar projects from time to time to each other, but we also get some really edge case stuff like above ground pools. Then we're going to talk to somebody about a mortgage. And like they're different enough that each time we need to look at that situation, price it appropriately. And that's part of our secret sauce for sure, is we're aligned with our clients. We're going to do what makes sense for them, of course, but because we're aligned on the sales performance side, we're in a position to make more money. And that should make everyone happy, because that means they can trust that we're going to do the very best we can with the leads they provide us. And I think just to like, as a clarification, I think it'll be important for the people who may be watching our podcast. We specialize in B2C, right? Direct to consumer. That's part of the title of the episode. So the companies that are going to be successful and the ones that we onboard, because we're actually kind of picky. I tell people no more often than I tell them yes, that they can work with us because they have to fit certain parameters. And it's, do you have legitimate leads, people who actually filled out a form or raised their hand and said, yeah, I do want to talk to you. Is it a direct-to-consumer situation? And usually there's a ticket item to the product or service being sold that's at least, what would you say, $1,000 probably for this sort of process that we do to have it make sense. And I think that's important for people to know ahead of time when engaging with us.
Yeah, for me personally, it's like one of the things that I love about our business is that we get to work in so many different verticals. As someone that's very controlled ADD person, I kind of learned to control my ADD at a certain point. I was like, in high school, I was all over the place. But over time, you get more focus. But we work in a lot of different verticals, and I love that because it's always interesting. We're not sticking with the same stuff, but we've done everything, like you said, above ground pools today. We've done the world's greatest ladder. We've done bed in a box mattress company that we've worked with, tax resolution, debt resolution, mortgage companies, some of the biggest mortgage companies in the country. We worked with insurance companies and all different types of insurance, everything from, standard property casualty to life insurance to final expense insurance and all the others. I'm trying to think of other verticals that we've worked in that are just kind of off, like those edge cases, like you talked about.
There's a lot of them, and you're right. And what's beautiful about it is you learn all kinds of things. There's sometimes people who are doing some home services, they figure something out. And then all of a sudden you talk to an insurance company, you're like, they figured out something totally different. And it's not just because the consumer base is different. It's just they're in different pockets, and so they learn. And so because we're in the middle and we're kind of almost aggregating information from all these different verticals, we end up learning all kinds of
best practices
across the board.
Yeah. Teeth alignment.
That's right, teeth alignment. You came
we
up
just
with
go after all these. Like,
I started selling ladders. I was slinging ladders.
Yeah, that was your first campaign.
Yeah,
you told me about that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, Jacob was selling ladders when no one else could sell ladders, and it was pretty awesome.
It wasn't just any ladder. It was the Lamborghini of ladders, in my opinion. It's not. The ladder sold itself.
That's right.
He's pitching us right now.
Oh, don't get me started.
I don't know if anything
Jacob.
will ever beat the fat laser one that we did too. We had a campaign with a laser that would melt your fat, and that was interesting for sure.
Ultimate closing question was, when's the last time you felt safe on a ladder? You're like, never?
Yeah, never.
Get out your credit card.
Yeah, for sure.
Ready. We're ready. It's game time.
Well, I was super impressed with a campaign that we brought on really recently. It's a financial institution. It's nationwide, super well known. And you think, okay, they've got to be pretty sophisticated, and they are. They're smart, and they know what they're doing. But we just had a couple things that we did. So, Jacob, I think it would be real interesting if you talked about that kind of branded experience that you and your team created for this client and what happened.
Yeah, no, I can definitely do that. So in this certain use case, we were calling a portfolio. So it was a current customer base, and we were trying to increase this company's recapture rate, or in other words, that we were trying to ensure that those customers continued to work with this company and continue to transact with this company. So we created really our contact rate was paramount, and then our conversion on those contacts. So when we got a hold of somebody, we've got to make sure that we take advantage of that and that we get them, one, a great experience, and two, we get them over to someone licensed to be able to pitch them and get them into their sales funnel. So when we met with them, we kind of reviewed the relationship that they had with these leads and this customer base, and we decided we were going to test some branded calls. So we started doing some branded calls early on in the call cadence, along with some SMS work, in order to drive inbounds back into our team. Now, something that I'll always say is when you're building cadences and you're building contact strategies, test. Like test your assumptions. You might think that something's going to happen this way, and it might happen a completely different way. This is one of those cases where I had an assumption or a hypothesis that was actually proven to not be true. So my thought was, when we have this branded call experience with this pocket of leads, contact rates are going to increase because they already have some brand loyalty to this client. But what I found after a couple weeks was that the contact rates were like basically the same, but our conversion rate on those contacts was up by 30%, and the number of inbound calls that were routing back into our team were up by 30%. So what was happening is we were actually getting hold of the people who had real intent at a much higher clip than we were prior. And the calls that were routing in through our internal inbound queue were actually closing at an extremely high rate on the client side. Like it became one of their top performing campaigns. And that wasn't what I thought. What I assumed was that contact rates were going to jump and we were just going to talk to a whole lot more people, and that would ultimately give us more on the back end. But what we found was, by creating a branded customer experience, we were able to find the customers with the most intent that were most prone to transact. And now, we do that on an ongoing basis for this partner, and it's been a great campaign for both of us. So I think always make sure that you test. Something else that I want to touch on too is a lot of these partners are like publicly traded.
Yeah, they're big names.
They're big names. You see them on, Yahoo Finance. You see them
on stadiums.
Stadiums. Like, and with that, not only do we want to make sure that they have a great return on investment, but we need to manage their risk and the exposure that they have to to nefarious parties.
Yep.
So doing things like litigator scrubs and DNC scrubs, we try to implement strategies that will help mitigate some of that risk to ensure that everything we do is super compliant and buttoned up. The answer can't always be more aggressive. It can't be send 50 texts on day one and make 100 calls over the course of 20 days. It's like, why can't we send 3 texts and call 10 times over the course of 2 weeks and get the same contact rate as someone who's just buying? And you can, and that's what we do. But not only are we going to get a hold of the same amount of people, but those people are going to be left with a much more positive perception of that brand than the ones that were just absolutely destroyed.
There's that famous phrase, it's like, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's like,
and we've seen a lot of hammers. Right?
Yeah, you got to have more than just a hammer in your tool belt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very common at that front end of the funnel, the top of funnel, to just slam people. They're like, get them, speed to lead is important, but then they just misinterpret that to say speed to lead times 1,000,000, nail them as many times as you can with your hammer.
You're just creating bad will.
Yeah.
Right.
Bad consumer experience, bad will.
Mm-hmm. I noticed there was one thing that happened when I first came on here at Squeeze about a year ago, and it was a campaign that we were running, and it was a head-to-head with an internal team, and we 2x their internal performance, which is pretty cool, right? But the stat that really, really mattered is we 3x'd their back-end conversion. And it's because of this kind of building this branded experience and creating a higher propensity to buy on the back end, because there's huge trust factor that's happening in their interactions with us. And I think part of that has to do with what you've created. I think some of it has to do with how well-trained our agents are. I definitely think it has to do with the fact that these are stateside call center agents who are college kids mostly. They're super educated, very motivated, and they follow the rules, so it creates this really great experience. Carson, recently you worked up a thing and you posted it on LinkedIn, and it had to do with the solar campaign that we were running and the huge difference between what they were doing before and versus what they did with us. Could you speak to that maybe just a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. We had a solar project at the company that had previously worked with an offshore group, and they were struggling to hit, they give them a target to hit a 10% lead conversion. And they're using, offshore reps and things like that to do it. And they would always get to like 8% lead conversion from the leads that we're getting. So if they get 100 leads in from their marketing efforts, they would end up with like 8 sales opportunities when they wanted 10. And we launched out of the gate. We built some technology to help automate a few things, because when we looked at their process before we even got our first list, we knew that there were some unnecessary complexities that could be automated with technology for rep scheduling and automating the making sure the calendar, we have the sales rep's calendar tied in with the lead that as it comes in. So basically we just automated it so that the sales rep for that location was tied in with the actual lead record when it hits our system. So by doing that, we avoided a lot of incorrect mistakes being scheduled in wrong areas and things like that. But
before we built this tool, it was a control. You basically had to search for 3 different attributes to ensure that you were scheduling on the right link for the right person. And there was like 1,500 options. So there were just a ton of incorrect scheduling with their pre-existing process.
Yeah, tons of mistakes.
Yeah.
And then, so when we rolled that out, I said, we have to do this. Otherwise, we're not interested in doing this at all because of those complexities and
we'll build it.
the inefficient process. Yeah. We need efficient processes. That's something that we're very big on, is making sure that the things that we do are efficient, the things that we have our labor do, our agents, making sure that they're not wasting time. And we launched that, and week 1 we hit like 23% lead conversion. So that means that on 100 leads, we generated 23 appointments instead of 8. And so,
but on the back end, they closed them at a 3.5 times clip. So on the same lead spend, when we did the math, it was like they got 14x sales on the same amount of lead spend that they did prior.
Yeah,
their pre-existing kind of situation. So we were able to bring some efficiency and some systems, which we're willing to do. We've built some really great stuff for our partners to help mitigate some of the problems that they have.
Well, I've heard you talk about it and basically call it like, we're going to rep proof this process, right?
Yeah.
If it can break, it will break eventually at some point. So if I can automate things, if I can streamline things and make it so that the sales agents are never in a position to make a mistake, then they won't, right?
Yeah, one of the things too, I think that you get with working with a team like ours is, we're here based in Utah, we're in the United States, and we're calling to consumers in the United States. And a lot of times there's an assumption that like offshore labor is cheaper, it's better, you're going to save so much money. But the lack of, pull-through rate and the communication barriers and all that create sort of not only a lower conversion, but sort of a bad customer experience as well. And it would be no different than, for instance, if my company Squeeze gets a contract with an India telecom company to call into India to speak with Indian consumers about their telephone options and contracts, they're not going to want to talk to us.
They'd probably be very confused if that
They'd
actually
probably be
happened.
very confused.
They're like, wait, they're calling me?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So I kind of, equate that to the same, that, they wouldn't want to speak with us there, nor do Americans feel comfortable speaking with, an offshore group about their financial situation or their mortgage or their banking or their insurance or, any of these things. And that's where we really shine and help, get those efficiencies.
Well, and across the board, like in the sales funnel, all of the different stages, like there's points of friction, right? There's points where things can go wrong. And in our contact cadence, it's the exact same way, right? It could be the branded call display or the lack of it. It could be a text message that doesn't have the correct messaging, or that, that isn't formatted correctly. Like, so you really need to look at the whole gamut and find those points of friction on the scripting, the way that you hand off a warmed up sales qualified opportunity to a loan officer, a debt consultant, like minimizing those points of friction and creating that seamless white glove experience is always going to be better for both the consumer and the company.
In fact, I think that most brand managers, most chief marketing officers will look at that sales experience that we're describing, and they have kind of this understanding that it's going to disrupt the brand to a certain amount, but they're okay with it because it represents a direct and predictable revenue stream. Yeah. What we've been able to do is kind of flip that around and say, no, yes, you can have a predictable revenue stream and you can have this sales process the way you want it to go, but at the same time, we can actually enhance your brand and not detract from your brand when we're doing that sort of thing. And that's a game changer, in my opinion, to be able to have that sort of experience. I think that's why we see over and over again that increase in propensity to buy on that back end, that 3x or 3.5x conversion that we've been able to see over and over again.
Yeah, but for any of this to be relevant, our partners have to have the systems and processes and tracking to be able to understand these things, right? They have to have a coherent marketing strategy where they're measuring all of these different, funnel metrics that ultimately we can help tweak and we can help optimize. That's why, I've said this so many times, like systems and processes, make sure that you have your eyes on the things that you need to measure, because that's the only way to make good decisions. That's why we always test, right? Because we always want to make sure that what we're doing is the most efficient way of doing it.
We have a lot of case study examples. I'm thinking of another one that was like more recent in the last year or so, where we would go through our process, take the lead from their opt-in, raising their hand, to starting the conversation, qualifying them to speak with a sales agent, making sure that they meet all this criteria, and we would disqualify a really high percentage of the people that we spoke with. And then they had us transferring that call to an offshore center who would then spend 8 minutes trying to write their name down and make sure that they had the right consumer record lead information. And a lot of the consumers would get very frustrated with that process, and they would hang up and they wouldn't end up purchasing, and they would think, what is going on? What is this? I was speaking with, Nate in Utah, and now I'm speaking with someone somewhere else. And, it's not a congruent, streamlined sales process. So.
Yeah, for sure. And to give context to this, a lot of times what we do when we're creating our sales opportunities, we'll set appointments sometimes, but we'll also do a transfer, right? So you get somebody on the phone, you qualify them, make sure they're the right fit, like Carson just described, and then you'll do an actual phone transfer while you have them on the phone. Because getting them on the phone can be hard, right? Contact rates have decreased, generally speaking, over time. And once you get them on the phone, you want to keep them there, and you want to transfer to that qualified salesperson, whether it's a loan officer or an insurance agent. And that process is very, very important. And that handoff, that verbal handoff between our agent and their agent is super important as well. And when you're going from U.S.-based trust-building call center to an offshore call center where people immediately kind of raise that red flag of trust of like, who is this? Or am I getting scammed? What's happening right now? It's just, like you said, it's not congruent one to the other. It needs to be that process. That's one of the key parts of the call, of handoff from trusted person I've just created a relationship with to another trusted person that I can trust and understand and more likely to buy.
Well, and our talent pool is really equipped to handle those conversations. We haven't even talked about that, but most of our agents are college-aged students or aspiring professionals with sales skills, right? So they can handle some of the nuances of sensitive subjects like your financial situation, right? There's got to be trust right away. Yeah. It also allows us to really optimize conversion rates once we do have someone engaged. We have a partner right now, really, really large company, and they have some branded, like owned and operated digital forms. And their goal across the company through all of their different kind of marketing channels was to hit a 50% conversion rate. So if they generate 1,000 forms, they want 500 right, to speak with a salesperson. And that's including all of their efforts and our efforts. And on that campaign, our team has been able to, just our team, hit that 50% number for them. So anything else is cherry on top. And our unique contact rate, we're contacting over 70% of those.
That's incredible.
Which is, if any company could send a message out to 70% of their customer base knowing that they would receive it, like what would happen,
Yeah, for sure. And this just reminds me, you never want to have a representative on the phone, a salesperson on the phone, who has nothing to lose, especially when you're talking about sensitive financial issues. And sometimes in these offshore centers, you have somebody who has nothing to lose because they're a lot of times under duress, right? And they're in difficult circumstances. And the same thing goes with a lot of the stateside call centers that are hiring anybody who walk through the door. And they don't have this really high filter that we have to attract the right talent. And they have nothing to lose on the phone, which means they're more likely to do something dumb. And fortunately, we have a culture where we've brought in the right sort of people who have something to lose, basically, that they're going to make sure that goes well and they understand what's at risk.
Yeah, we also have, our SOC 2 certification, which certainly helps minimize that risk. It's basically, for those who don't know, a very high level of security certification that takes a long time and a lot of work to get, to get across the finish line, but we've been able to do that. And, background checks on our agents and our hiring pool, the amount that we filter out, these are all things that help us create that branded customer experience to where if I'm a chief marketing officer or a chief, a brand manager, I'm saying, hey, I'm glad that these are the people taking. Yeah. In fact, oftentimes they're saying, I would rather your people take these conversations than my own people.
Yeah. We do an OFAC background check as well as part of our process, which is for offshore, anti-money laundering, stuff like that. So
you would not believe the number of people that we filter out.
Well, and our SOC 2 people are belligerent too. I have this little notepad, Remarkable, and I was writing on it one day. Someone walks in, he's like, do you have a passcode on the top of that thing? And I'm like, no. He's like, put a passcode on it. They're watching everything for sure.
Yeah, big brother.
Yeah, they're making sure that we're clean, which is
security
good.
Is super important these days, and that's part of the trust and part of that brand experience is making sure that they can trust us, that we're not going to jeopardize, their client data. I think that's a huge concern for most companies is we're going to give you our customer data and prospect data to work with, making sure that they can give that data to a partner they can trust, and that's going to make sure that they're secure. And that's one, I think this is our 4th year now of being SOC 2 certified. And we keep raising the standard and the expansion of, what that means and adding new software layers and all that to make sure that it's secure. One of the things that we had talked about before, Nate, though, you mentioned was the, experience from the consumer to our sales rep to the sales rep or closer that we're working with, maybe a loan officer, could be a financial consultant or something like that, making sure that salesperson trusts our agent did their job is also huge, because the minute that trust is broken, it's going to impact sales conversion. They're going to have opinions on if we did a poor job, and that's going to spread to the other agents, and we're going to get a bad reputation. And
if they're stoked to take our call, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like they'll close the deal.
Absolutely.
And if they're judging before they even handle that call, guess what's going to happen?
That's always top of mind for us, is just making sure that we have that good reputation with the sales agents, that they know that if they get a call from us, that it's qualified, that it's someone that's ready to speak with. So,
one of the things that was kind of fun is I got a sales inquiry on our site saying, hey, I want to take a look at your services. And I jumped on the call, and it was another financial institution. And they said, we recruited a couple of new sales professionals, and they came over and they specifically said, you got to go get those squeeze transfers. And that's how they phrased it. And so they reached out and jumped on our site. And that was a very easy sell, as you can imagine, for me to be able to bring in that new client.
Almost as easy as the Lamborghini of all ladders.
Yeah, that's right. Not as
ladder sells itself.
If you can sell a salesperson, you've done a good job, I think. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I think we've hit that hour, and thanks for all your comments and things.
Yeah.
This has been the Juice Direct-to-Consumer Podcast. I'm Nate Clegg here with Jacob Thorpe and Carson Poppinger.
Leave your comments and questions below, and we'll try to get to them.
Like and subscribe.